After spending the majority of their lives in prison, there might be a light at the end of the tunnel for Erik and Lyle Menendez. Since they've been incarcerated, the world's view of their crimes has largely changed, and they've made significant efforts to change the world around them in the meantime. In 1996, Lyle and Erik Menendez were convicted of the murder of their parents, Jose and Kitty. Throughout the trial, the Menendez brothers' lawyer made a strong argument that their brutal attack was a result of years of terrible abuse at the hands of their father, and witness testimonies backed up allegations that Jose had sexually abused his two sons. At one point, Erik took the stand to testify that molestation began when he was 6 years old.
And he would ask me if I've told anyone, and I said no.
However, the extremely graphic nature of the killings, carried out with shotguns, was ultimately enough to lead to life sentences for them both. Prosecutors argued that the Menendez brothers merely wanted to get their hands on the family fortune, which they started spending quickly once they inherited. The brothers had a strong desire to be incarcerated together, but September 10, 1996 would be the last day they would see each other for over 20 years. The two were also held in maximum security cells, so they didn't have much interaction with anyone early on. In the following decades, Erik and Lyle were typically at least 500 miles away from each other in separate prisons. While phone calls between the two were prohibited, they did manage to find ways to stay in contact throughout all those years. In an interview with People, Lyle Menendez said, "We write each other regularly. We even play chess through the mail, but it's a little slow." Due to the many years of abuse Lyle and Erik Menendez suffered at the hands of their father, Jose, juries considered convicting the brothers of manslaughter rather than murder. Even after the two were arrested in 1990 and tried shortly after, their cases originally ended in mistrials because juries could not decide if they should be sentenced for murder or manslaughter. Robert Rand also voiced his opinion on the matter and told A&E True Crime, "The streets of California are not safer because Erik and Lyle Menendez are locked up in prison. Over the years, the Menendez brothers have tried many times to appeal their case. Most notably, in 2016, a new law passed in California allowed those convicted to bring new evidence of sexual abuse to light, when it was previously prohibited in their court case. However, this attempt and all the others failed to get the desired results for the brothers. Then, in 2022, a new opportunity arose for Lyle and Erik. As Rand explained, "It is not definite, but the Menendez brothers' lawyers are going to file a writ of habeas corpus, and they're going to ask for a new trial. The threshold for filing is you have to have new evidence that was not available at the time of the trial, and they do have new evidence. That evidence is a letter written by Erik in 1988 that details his father's abuse, which was never seen in the trial." Sexual abuse has always been a big part of the Menendez brothers' story, and their allegations against their father Jose form the cornerstone of their initial defense. But in the years since their conviction, their claims of abuse were rendered much more credible, thanks in part to another one of Jose's victims coming forward. In 2023, Roy Rosselló, a former member of the Spanish-language boy band Menudo, came forward with his own allegations against Jose Menendez. Jose was an executive at the RCA record label, and the documentary Menendez plus Menudo, Boys Betrayed, claimed that Jose was invited to sexually abuse him as part of a record deal negotiation. In the decades since the Menendez brothers took the stand, the conversations around sexual violence have changed dramatically. While Erik and Lyle may have been scoffed at, if not outright mocked, for the allegations in the mid-90s, they may now live to see the treatment of abuse victims in criminal courts change completely in the coming years. In 2024, public interest in the Menendez brothers case reignited after Season 2 of Ryan Murphy's Monsters hit Netflix. After a well-received first season about Jeffrey Dahmer, the Menendez story was chosen for Season 2, and it certainly stirred the pot of public opinion. Shortly after the season premiered, Erik released a statement strongly objecting to the show and its depiction of Lyle in particular. Other commentators have praised the factual accuracy of the series, celebrating its attention to even small details like Lyle's choice to play a Milli Vanilli song at his parents' funeral. Additionally, the show also depicts the connection between the brothers and O.J. Simpson. The Menendezes knew Simpson through their father and even conferred with him about legal strategies before their trial. Of course, his own trial had a far more preferable outcome compared to the Menendezes. The newfound attention on the Menendez case has given Erik and Lyle a posse of celebrity supporters. Rosie O'Donnell has been a longtime supporter and even spoke in their favor on Larry King Live back in 1996. In the decades since, she's visited the brothers and developed friendships with both of them. More recently, Kim Kardashian published a personal essay reflecting on her interactions with the brothers and criticizing the prosecutor's conduct. Cooper Koch, who plays Erik in Monsters, has also emerged as a supporter.
All I really wanted to tell him was that I believe him.
Lyle's actor, Nicholas Alexander Chavez, has not joined him, stating he wants to move on from the role and keep his reflections private. The most eyebrow-raising public figure to speak in favor of the Menendezes is Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Now famous for her involvement in the murder of her own abusive parent, Blanchard might be uniquely qualified to weigh in on the case. But given how divisive Blanchard's own case was, this notoriety might not be fully beneficial to Erik and Lyle. It's not just celebrities who've been attracted to the Menendez case. The constant trickle of documentaries, news coverage, TikToks, and the Netflix series has only increased its exposure and revealed the story to a new generation for the first time. Gen Z observers have approached the conversation with a more nuanced understanding of the different ways abuse and its consequences can manifest in individual lives, and older generations are looking at the story with fresh eyes. The advocacy group Justice for Erik and Lyle acts as a one-stop shop for news about the case, petitions to sign in their favor, and information and resources for male victims of sexual abuse. The Menendez brothers have used their time behind bars to support other abuse survivors, and it seems the people behind the group are doing their best to spread the same message. In October 2024, Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon told a news conference that his office would change its position on the Menendez brothers' sentence.
Under the law, resentencing is appropriate, and I am going to recommend that to a court tomorrow.
Specifically, Gascon stated he believed the abuse allegations and felt that the then 35 years Erik and Lyle served was a sufficient sentence. He was even prepared to encourage a court to remove the without parole provision from each of their sentences. Unfortunately for Gascon and his supporters, he was defeated for re-election less than a month later. His successor, Nathan Hawkman, campaigned on prioritizing victims' rights and public safety over leniency with sentencing, and voters evidently liked what they heard. In February 2025, Hawkman made his feelings about Erik and Lyle's bids for resentencing clear. He pointed out that their abuse allegations had little corroborating evidence, and even if it did occur, he didn't see it as legal grounds to kill their parents. But the resentencing decision was not wholly up to Hawkman. In April 2025, a ruling by Judge Michael Jessic dismissed Hawkman's efforts to pull back Gascon's motions for resentencing. This allowed the effort to continue, even if Hawkman continued to argue against Erik and Lyle's release. On a separate front, the brothers also petitioned California Governor Gavin Newsom for clemency. This might be a long shot, as Newsom has notably quashed parole for high-profile offenders like Robert F. Kennedy's assassin Sirhan Sirhan and Manson cult killer Leslie Van Houten. Even so, the New York Times says he's considering the issue. Believe it or not, the Menendez brothers have counted relatives among their biggest supporters. Family members from both Jose and Kitty's sides of the family have issued statements of support and appeared at court for the men over the years. Some claim to have known Jose to be abusive, if not to the extent the brothers later alleged, while others simply love Lyle and Erik enough to extend their hand. Their cousin, Ana Maria Baralt, has spoken publicly about the personal progress Lyle and Erik have achieved while incarcerated, and emphasized how both clinical and public understanding of PTSD has changed in the decades since the killings.
They have sought to better themselves and serve as a support and inspiration for survivors all over the world.
That's not to say the entire family is on a united front about this. Kitty's brothers Brian and Milton stated they don't believe the abuse occurred and that it was greed that led Lyle and Erik to kill. But their sister, Joanne Vandermolen, has been a particular pillar of support for Erik and Lyle and clearly spoke against Milton's position to Us magazine. In addition to their wide media coverage in recent years, one of the Menendez brothers has also taken to social media. As of April 2025, Lyle's Facebook account boasts over 100,000 followers and regularly posts updates about the case. Recently, Lyle swiped at District Attorney Hawkman for not allowing relatives to leave the room during a hearing before pictures of the murder victims were displayed. This caused one of the elderly Menendez aunts to faint. Additionally, their friend and supporter Robert Rand maintains a blog about the brothers and developments in the case. Rand, a crime writer, has written a book about the murders and periodically updates the site to weigh in on issues involving Erik and Lyle. In February 2025, he published a post openly denouncing the Menendez season of monsters. Thanks to some open-minded California prison regulations and the wonder of the internet, the Menendez brothers can actually give comments on their case in basically real time. For example, in a relatively recent TMZ interview, they spoke over the phone with Two Angry Men podcast hosts Mark Garagos and Harvey Levin. The wide-ranging discussion covered their previous spoiled attitudes, the challenges they faced early in their incarceration, and their feelings about their potential resentencing. Lyle also mentioned the Netflix series Monsters. Video chat is allowed in the prison, so he's seen most of the show and heard a certain amount of commentary about it. He praised Cooper Koch's portrayal of his brother and went on to note the potential benefit to bringing the case back into the public eye. He stated, "Many people were educated about what can happen even among the wealthy behind walls, hedges, and manicured lawns. I think it opened a lot of people's eyes, and that's always a good thing." This mural the Menendez brothers worked on in prison is just one part of a larger plan to beautify the prison yard. Spearheaded by Lyle, the Green Space Project embraces the California model for making prison life more normalized to aid inmates in their transition when they're released.
Don't be afraid of me. I'm going to be a good neighbor, and thanks to these projects like this, it helps absolutely.
In addition to the publicized mural, the plan will ultimately convert the concrete-heavy prison yard to a more park-like enclosure. This will not only make the prison yard less depressing, but also provide a better location for the prison's dog training program. The initiative has been sponsored by Guide Dogs of America, a local labor union, and a paint workshop that has donated supplies for the mural. During the trial, Lyle Menendez and his girlfriend Anna Erickson continued their romantic correspondence. Even the high likelihood that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars did not deter their love, at least at first, and the two married. The relationship did not last and ended in divorce a short time later. But Lyle did not remain single for long. He soon formed a deep connection with another woman, Rebecca Sneed, whom he'd known for a decade. In 2003, the two were allowed to wed in the maximum security visiting area of Mule Creek State Prison and stayed together until their separation in November 2024. Lyle told People at the time, "Our interaction tends to be very free of distractions, and we probably have more intimate conversations than most married spouses do, who are distracted by life's events. We try and talk on the phone every day, sometimes several times a day. I have a very steady, involved marriage, and that helps sustain me and brings a lot of peace and joy." Similar to his brother, Erik Menendez was also in touch with a woman during the trial, which began in 1993. The relationship was platonic at first, with Tammy initially reaching out through letters because of the sympathy she felt for Erik as she watched his story unfold on television. At the time, she was also married. Tammy supported Erik through a difficult time, and he returned the favor in 1996 when Tammy had her own horrific experiences. First, she discovered her husband had been sexually abusing her teenage daughter for 3 years. Her husband confessed his crimes to the authorities before taking his own life. Tammy reached out to Erik, who comforted her through his letters. In an interview with People, Tammy admitted she was extremely nervous to meet Erik in person, but that instantly faded. She said, "When he walked into the room, he was so full of life, he hopped down the stairs. It was like I was meeting an old friend." In 1999, the two became so serious that they tied the knot at Folsom State Prison. When describing their marriage, years later, Erik said, "Tammy's love has propelled me to become a better person. I want to be the greatest possible husband to her, and this affects the choices I make every day in prison."
He's always there for me emotionally, and I didn't have that with my first marriage.
The harsh conditions of prison can lead imprisoned people toward a stronger devotion to their faith, which was the case for Erik Menendez early on. In the interview with People, Erik spoke about his activities at the time, saying, "I write and read about spirituality, about life. I want to be productive, to find some meaning in helping others." Years later, Erik has continued his compassionate pursuits. Journalist Robert Rand, who has reported on the brothers' case since 1989, revealed to A&E True Crime, Erik leads several self-help groups every week at Donovan, including a mindful meditation group, and has started a hospice group at Donovan. In their lives behind bars, the Menendez brothers have had some time to pursue personal activities, but they were also forced to work for the facilities in which they were incarcerated. Erik worked as a groundskeeper at California State Prison near Sacramento, and later became a janitor after transferring to Pleasant Valley State Prison. Similarly, Lyle also worked as a janitor at California Corrections Institution. However, when talking with A&E True Crime, Robert Rand emphasized how the brothers have decided to spend their free time, saying, "What's really important about Lyle and Erik in 2022 is that they are both contributing quite a bit to their prison community. Lyle is very involved in prison reform activism. Lyle has served as president of the inmate government for more than 15 years, so he's often been in a position to make significant changes. Erik has done his part as well, devoting himself to assisting terminally ill inmates." In 2018, one of the greatest wishes of both Menendez brothers was granted when the two were allowed to see each other for the first time since 1996. Even better, the reunion was not brief. Lyle was allowed to join Erik at R.J. Donovan Correctional Facility, and the two were finally incarcerated in the same prison.
Now, after 20 years apart, they're together at last.
At first, they were housed in separate sections, so they couldn't interact. But in April 2018, the two were allowed to reunite, and Erik was moved to Lyle's section within the prison. The first moment they saw each other quickly brought tears of joy. As Rand explained to ABC News, Lyle missed his brother so much, and Erik had also talked about how much he missed Lyle. They just hugged each other for a few minutes without saying any words to each other, and the prison officials let them spend an hour together in a room. At the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility, the Menendez brothers are able to see each other frequently after years apart, but their living conditions aren't ideal. The biggest issue is one the prison has dealt with for over a decade. The prison population has reached a level far beyond the prison's capacity. Even all the way back in 2009, a warden confirmed in an interview with KPBS that the number of people held in the facility reached 4,800, while 2,200 was the intended number when it first opened in 1987. By the time Lyle and Erik were locked up at Donovan together, the problem had not been alleviated. In visits to the brothers, Rand learned about their sleeping situations amidst the rampant overcrowding. Rand described in his blog, The Menendez Murders, how each one lives in dorm-like rooms. They are housed separately from each other, but both share their larger cells with 5 other people. Lyle, at least, has his own bed instead of the common scenario of being given a bunk. In 2021, the prison also faced criticism for its high number of COVID-19 infections and COVID-related deaths. By April 2021, more than 1,000 prisoners had tested positive for COVID, and 18 had died.
Those with loved ones at the Donovan Correctional Facility say not enough is being done to protect inmates from COVID-19.
The highly publicized trial of the Menendez brothers, along with the numerous documentaries and TV shows about them that came after, have given both celebrity status. However, Lyle and Erik are not the only notorious people locked up at Donovan Correctional Facility. Arguably, the most well-known prisoner there is Suge Knight, founder of the rap-centered music label Death Row Records. Far more infamous are Sirhan Sirhan and Tex Watson of the Manson family. Rapper Anna Ray Brown, who used the stage name X-Rated, has the closest relationship with the brothers. Brown has been behind bars for almost as long as Lyle and Erik. In 2019, Brown became one of the pair's success stories, since their help led him to leave his criminal past and even played a role in his eventual release from prison, when Erik wrote the parole board on his friend's behalf. When asked by the San Diego Union-Tribune about the support he gave Brown, Lyle recalled, "I told him, with young people looking up to you, kids looking up to you, is that what you want to promote?" Despite their convictions, the Menendez brothers have proven to be some of the most exemplary prisoners behind bars. Even as early as 2005, prison spokesperson Lieutenant Marion Spearman told People, "Erik is a good prisoner. He does not cause problems." Since then, the reputations of both brothers have only improved, and they've been granted the most privileged status by the authorities at their prison. The brothers were even able to opt into a first-of-its-kind unit called Echo Yard in 2018. The experimental program, located in its own section of the prison, is meant to encourage building up a sense of community, especially by removing gangs entirely, as well as teaching life skills to imprisoned people and focusing on rehabilitation. Including Erik and Lyle, there are 780 prisoners housed in the unique detention unit, where there are no roommate requirements, so people with very different backgrounds may be living together. To outsiders, that may not seem too extreme, but to a longtime prisoner, Mitchell Celestine, it was unheard of. He told the San Diego Union-Tribune, "In the main line, you'd never be in a cell with another race. Never ever play ball with other races. In the main line, you can't even give food or sell food to someone from another race."